of Dr. King in 1968, but the anniversary of the speech he gave at Riverside Church here in New York, April 4th, 1967, exactly 1 year before he was killed. Do you think there's a connection?
Amy, I have long felt, and I continue to feel, that it is impossible to understand Martin's assassination by only understanding a white segregationist man who killed Martin by himself. I am deeply convinced that Martin's two actions, one of trying to organize the poor to challenge this government in Washington, D.C., in the Poor People's Campaign, and Martin's determination not just to speak out against Vietnam, but to speak out against the entire imperialist and militarist direction of the country. All of that has to be understood when we try to understand Martin's assassination. So yes, I see a connection.
So talk about Dr. King's evolution in being willing to speak out publicly around the war in Vietnam. How much risk was he taking?
Let's talk about a risk that he was very aware of from the outset. And he would put it in these terms: he was at great risk of damaging his own soul and spirit if he did not speak out against what he knew was terrible. King was, in the deepest part of his being, a pastor, caring for those who were beaten up, caring for those who were in need, and in the great traditional ways of the Christian faith, caring for the most outcast and those who were considered poor and needy. King was always attuned to that. Had he not spoken on behalf of what the war was doing to those people in this country and overseas, he would not have been able to live with himself.
Dr. Vincent Harding, former colleague and friend of Reverend King, he drafted King's Beyond Vietnam speech. We end today's broadcast with Dr. King in his own words, his last public words, given the night before his death. It was a stormy night. Hundreds of people, many of them sanitation workers he'd come to Memphis to march with, packed into the Mason Temple.
And I want to say tonight, that I, too, am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960, when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962. The Negroes in Albany, Georgia, decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't rise ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963. The black people of Birmingham, Alabama, aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, now it doesn't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning, and as we got started on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, "We are sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane, and to be sure that all of the bags were checked, and to be sure that nothing would be wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully, and we've had the plane protected and guarded all night." And then I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Dr. King, within 24 hours, he would be dead, assassinated April 4th, 1968. And that does it for our broadcast. If you'd like a copy, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Burke, Shrif Abdul Qudus, Aaron Mata, Angela Kamet, Jeffrey Hagerman, Nicole Salazar, Steve Martinez, Hani Massoud. I'm Amy Goodman. Democracynow.org is our website. Thanks for joining us.